Welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Ball. My co-host is Justin Baker. He joins me now.
Just now. Was that the signal to go?
That was the bat signal. Yeah. And on today's show, we're going to talk Atlantic Division preview. We know the Atlantic Division, along with the rest of the NHL, has already begun playing games, and that's fine because they've given us a couple games to kind of maybe get an early view, early vibe of some of these teams. So we're just going to keep going through our previews here early. It's kind of it is nice. I've found that it's been a little nice seeing these teams play a little bit here early on. Gives us a good glimpse. So we are on part 2 of the Atlantic Division. We already did the Buffalo Sabres, Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Montreal Canadiens. So up next, the Ottawa Senators, the Florida Panthers, and the Boston Bruins in no particular order. Justin, how are you? First of all, specifically, how's the hockey watching been going so far this year in this season?
Oh my goodness, it's been great. I mean, so I will tell you, and especially for our 5 listeners who maybe don't know, I got to go to the Red Wings home opener this past week, and my nephew played in between the periods, doing a little shootout, which was fantastic. I mean,
Did he score?
He didn't score because they did like a shootout thing between, they went blue line to blue line, basically. But the goaltender, after the first shot, my nephew went 7th or 8th in line on the team. But after the first or second shot, the goalie basically just laid there on the ground, spread eagle, doing nothing. And so none of these kids at 5 and 6 years old really know how to lift the puck that well.
Okay.
So it was just nobody was scoring.
Dickhole dad told his kid, just lay there, son.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same concept. Why not? I can't believe no team's ever tried this. Why not just get a sumo wrestler and put him in net?
Dude.
Why not?
Yeah. I mean,
what's stopping you?
Yeah. Someone's going to think of it sometime. I guarantee it.
I mean, I'm sure every 11-year-old that's ever played hockey's thought about it once or twice.
Right? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's about when the first time I thought about it. But well, I guess this is a lesson for your nephew that he needs to learn how to raise the puck.
Yeah.
Can you just get him the most wicked curve you've ever seen?
I should, because I actually thought about that after I leaned over to my wife and made a little comment. She's like, "Who the frick is Matt Murray?" I was just like, man, you know what? These kids should be going high glove Montreal did on Matt Murray the other night. And I was just like, oh, wait, you don't know who that is. So,
future Hall of Famer Matt Murray.
Oh, boy.
He'll win his 3rd and 4th Stanley Cup here in the next couple of years. Okay, so let's dive in. We'll start with either Boston or Florida. We'll sandwich the Canadian team in between the two American cities. Which team would you like to fire off the show with?
Man, you know what? Let's start off with the team that I'm most interested out of these 3 to watch this season, and that's the Boston Bruins.
Okay, I'm intrigued as to why you say that, because I was like, oh, okay, he's going to say the Florida Panthers. I was clicking over to my tab. You did not. You said the Boston Bruins. Explain yourself.
Well, first off, I'm traditionally a Boston hater, right? I've never been a huge fan of the Bruins. I even when they won their lone cup in 2011, was it? I was rooting for the Sedin twins the whole way, and Roberto
I think
Luongo.
Everybody was, except for Bruins fans.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think everyone wanted to see Vancouver win that series.
Never been a huge Brad Marchand fan, and still am not. However, this team intrigues me because, one, they've got, Brad Marsh is out. Charlie McAvoy is out. They've got plenty of injuries there up front. I'm intrigued to see how the David Pasta negotiations go over the course of the year, and if anything plays out there. And then not only that, but just the swan song of having David Krejci back has been kind of interesting for me. So I'm intrigued to see what this team can do as far as, keeping the ship afloat, as everybody's been calling it. And so, we know what Florida is and we know what they're going to bring to the table. But for me, this team's a little bit more interesting just because of the injuries at foot right now.
Well, the injuries, but also the fact that, how many other teams have 6, 7, 8, 9 UFAs at the end of the year.
Right.
Now some of those are they're bottom pairing, bottom 6 guys, but Pasternak, of course, the biggest one. I mean, he's going to get over under $10.5 million. What do you think?
I'm going over. I think he's going to get an Artemi Panarin type deal.
I agree, especially, the cap's going up. And what really makes this year probably more interesting than anything else is the fact that this is Patrice Bergeron's last year. This is it. I don't think he's coming back. I think he's alluded to the fact that this is his swan song. Him and Krejci are going for it one more time together. And I mean, the Bruins should and need to be doing everything they can to support that and set them up to try and win, because this is it right here. I mean, after this year, are the Bruins going to be bad? No, but the Bruins are certainly going to go into a place where nobody likes to be, and that's like wild card, borderline playoff team. And generally that spells it's time to rip this thing down and start over.
And that's the other thing too, right? So even if, maybe David Krejci comes back another year, he's 36 this year. Patrice Bergeron, 37. So these guys are, they're probably going to retire. Like you said, Bergeron, I do think he's going to retire after this year. And David Krejci, even if he does somehow decide to come back, I don't know why he would. But, again, they don't have anybody in the pipeline. They don't have anybody in the works to take over as, their top 2 centermen. So if you're David Pasternak, and that's another reason why I think this team is so intriguing this year, if you're Pasta, why would you want to resign knowing that there's going to be nobody to center you for the next, 8 years of your deal? So I don't know if maybe Boston's got some glorious plan to just sit there and salivate over Ryan O'Reilly and say, okay, cool, he's going to be a free agent because St. Louis isn't resigning him, and then we're going to go ahead and get our, poor man's Patrice Bergeron here. So
yeah, all those things are possible. That's always possible. But I don't see Pasternak not re-signing in Boston. It's already in the works. He's said, I'm open to having conversations all year long. He doesn't care. So I think that this is going to be, I doubt they're just going to rip the whole thing down. I mean, you still have Pasternak. You still got Hall for another 2 years after this. Coyle. I mean, there's some decent pieces. You could probably retool on the fly here for a minute. Especially when you consider how good, Marchand and McAvoy and they have good goaltending. I think they'll still be okay. They'll still probably be in the playoff picture. But it's gonna be interesting to see, how can they move forward from this. But in particular for this year, to me, the fascinating thing is that this is probably it. So what do the Bruins do that maybe no team in the rest of the league is willing to do because of who's going to leave after this year? That's what fascinates me most with the Bruins.
Okay.
And what kind of level do we see Bergeron play at, especially as we approach the playoffs, which, right now, 2 games into the season, we're not too concerned, but I'm fascinated. Like, the Bruins are probably that team where you're like, nope, don't want to play them in the first round. They've got nothing to lose, but everything to win at the same time. Like, they don't get another shot. Whereas all the other teams, you got in the back of your mind, oh, we'll get another shot next year. Maybe outside of the Leafs, who there's a lot of people in that organization that aren't going to get another shot if they can't win the division or can't win the first round at least. But what tells you that the Bruins could win a round in the playoffs?
What tells me? Experience. That's pretty much what it boils down to. I think you have guys like Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, who have been there. They've had success in the playoffs, right? They know what it takes to win, and I think they have just such a good leadership group here. These guys can get over that hump just on, knowing what it takes to win alone. Now, going beyond that, if you want to look maybe something a little bit more concrete and, on paper type thing, like you mentioned, right, a lot of UFAs, I think there's going to be a lot of guys who are hungry something to prove, and they want to still say that, hey, you know what, Boston is still relevant, and especially, like I said, David Pasta, who's up for a new contract, he's waiting till the playoffs to see how he produces to leverage his, dollar figure. So,
here's what I find intriguing about last year's playoffs. Because, you think about it, like the Bruins didn't win in the first round. They lost in 7 games to the Hurricanes. Well, check this out. We had 3 7-game series, a full 7-game series in the Eastern Conference. And of those series, all 3 game 7s were decided by a goal. And when you consider, hey, if things, at that point, I think we're all willing to say, like, that's like, especially the Rangers Penguins, that was an OT game. Like, that could have just as easily gone the other way, and the Penguins could have been moving on. It could have been the Penguins, the Bruins, and the Leafs in the second round instead of the other way around. Like, it was very close to that. So you consider what how close the Bruins were last year, and you have to wonder, does a year of Hampus Lindholm meshing with that group, they're going to get these guys back healthy, and it doesn't look like they're struggling to win early on here. So, they win their first 2 games. So you wonder, how good can this group be together once they all come back healthy?
Yeah, they look a little revived. Rejuvenated with David Krejci back there, right? I think he's bringing a different swagger and something that a guy like Eric Haula just couldn't bring on that second line. And when you have that flexibility, right, I think, Krejci and Pasta, they have such good chemistry. And I think with, that tied in with Bergeron and Marchand having such good chemistry on that first line, there's so much flexibility there, and that just makes them even more dangerous, in my opinion, this go around versus last year.
Yeah, the other side of it is, what's so different from this team adding Krejci from 2 years ago? And I think that what they've done, they bring in Pavel Zacha. He's got something to prove. You bring in Hampus Lindholm. He's never really been, at least in a while, in a position where he gets to be the guy on a playoff team, top defenseman, other than this past year's playoff run. But he gets a full year with the Bruins. He's signed to a new contract. This is his blue line. Him and McAvoy, they own the blue line. And I think you've got a team of a lot of guys that have a lot to prove. Because you mentioned it, 2011, that was 11 years ago. By the time the playoffs start, that's 12 playoff seasons ago. I know the Bruins have been to the Stanley Cup Finals. It's not as if they're not successful in the playoffs. It is freaking hard to win the cup. To have one Stanley Cup under your belt is a beautiful thing. But Pasternak has no cup. Hall doesn't have a cup. The only guys with Stanley Cups on this team are Krejci and Bergeron, I think. Am I right?
No, Brad Marchand.
Oh, Brad Marchand was there. Yep. So you've got 3 guys with Stanley Cups on this team, but that's by no means a team that isn't hungry to win. So that would be where I kind of look at it and I go, wow, the Bruins are in this very unique position where they've got to be looking around like this is probably it, and we have to win. So
yeah, it'll be interesting too, because they don't have second round picks this year or next. So if they're going to make a play, right, if they want somebody who's going to push the needle for this group, they're going to have to give up some futures, some first rounders, right?
Yeah, and do you really want to trade? Like, that's the other side. Do you want to trade that first round pick when you probably are going to lose? Let's say Bergeron comes back next year, fine. But within a couple of years, Bergeron's going to be gone. And Marchand's also not the youngest person in the world. He's 34 years old. Krejci's going to be gone. You almost look at that 2023 pick, and I wonder if you look at it and say, we have to keep that pick.
Right.
Because of who we know is going to be in this draft.
Well, you have to start prepping for the future sometime. I know, when Bergeron and, Krejci, Marchand, these guys are gone, you basically have to hit the reset button or at least, a soft rebuild. So you got to have some pieces there, right? You got to have some kids in the pipeline these days. You can't just go do it free agent style. And, You can't hope that next year, maybe a guy like Max Pacioretty or Ryan O'Reilly, Patrick Kane, you can go out and re-sign all these guys and basically reload on the fly, right? I mean, it's just not going to happen. So who knows, right? I mean,
yeah, and it's funny because when you look back at the Bruins draft in 2022 and 2021, in 2022, their first 3 draft picks were centers, and in 2021, 2 of their first 3 picks were centers. So they're definitely rearing up here for certain guys to be out of here. I mean, hey, with the Bruins, Charlie Coyle as a third-line center is absolute money. With him as a first-line center, I am taking the under all day on whatever you've got with the Bruins. But, okay, we haven't hit much on the defense. Anything you want to add there as far as obviously Matt Grzelcyk, he'll probably, I don't know if you're going to go Grzelcyk and McAvoy or Lindholm and McAvoy, but you've got some nice pieces up there. I'd say that it's probably outside of, they're very top heavy on their defense. You've got Lindholm, Grzelcyk, and McAvoy, and after that you kind of fall into this they brought in Mike Riley. You've got Connor Clifton, Derek Forbert, but you look at the rest of the deep and you go, well, that's definitely the spot where there's question marks.
Yeah, I mean...
And they did bring in Anton Strawman. They signed him to a 1-year, $1 million.
Yeah, I will say, though...
Brandon Carlo as well.
Yeah. I will say, though, what's more interesting to me with this defense is what is Jim Montgomery going to do with this defense, right? I'm curious, now that Bruce Cassidy's out of there, what kind of system is he going to bring? I haven't had a chance to watch any Boston games yet this year, so I don't really know, if they're playing a little bit more structured game or if they're jumping up in the play a little bit more. I know Charlie McAvoy is going to be all over the ice regardless, but Jim
McAvoy, everything was going so well for him in Dallas before he had the substance abuse deal go on, and he was let go. But man, I know everybody talked about letting Cassidy go. He's top 5 NHL coach. You're not going to get a better coach, and I don't know. We'll see. Jim Montgomery might be the push that this team needs. Just that little switch up, because things were going very well in Dallas when he had taken over, and so I'm excited to see what he can do. Because I mean, I barring playing the Leafs in the playoffs, then I really am excited for them to lose.
Yeah, I will say, regardless what he does with his defense, they've got 2 good goaltenders back there, right? That can bail out this defense.
Sure, yeah.
If they don't get shit,
And you don't have that Tuukka Rask BS going on all year long. Is he going to come back? Oh, he's all right. Time to send Swayman to the minors.
And Swayman's on a contract year too, so this is going to be fun to watch him.
Big year. Yeah, the Bruins may be the dark horse of this division. I know the sexy dark horse is probably Ottawa or Detroit, but as far as a team that could win the Stanley Cup that is not really being talked about, it's probably the Boston Bruins. I guess that brings us to our floor and our ceiling. And I suppose that I've just kind of tipped my hand. Although, do I feel like the Bruins will win a cup? No. But could things go the right way? Could they just mortgage the future based on Patrice Bergeron to give him one more run and go after? Is there a way they can reel in Patrick Kane? I think so. They've got $4.6 million cap space. They're getting a lot of cap space with these big names and expensive players on LTIR. There may be a way to bring in Patrick Kane to Boston, or any other free agent, but especially Patrick Kane would be an absolute insanity boost for this team. So I think they could win the Stanley Cup, but I don't think they will. But I think that's probably their ceiling is they've been to the Cup Finals before with this group, so it has to be the Stanley Cup Finals. But I think a lot has to go right for that to happen. I think their floor is likely what happened last year, right? Like they're going to be super competitive in a first round matchup, and they just are a little bit too past their prime to be able to beat one of these top teams if they end up in a position where they're a wild card team or the 3. They're going to be playing a good team no matter where they are, and maybe they just don't have it anymore to win that round. So that would be another Game 7 first round loss.
Okay.
How about yourself?
I think as far as a floor, just to start there, I mean, wild card team, right? I think I really do think this team is going to be very competitive. I think they're going to be in the thick of it all year long. I think with what they have up front, what they have in net, I'm not worried about this team making a push for a wild card spot. Now, of course, the wheels could go off, injuries, all that other crap that we don't like to discuss with these could happen, and then they could
in which case they've got a lot of UFAs they could deal.
Right, yeah, absolutely. But I think with a few first-round picks in hand and some cap space to work with, I think they're going to make a push to deal for somebody, whether it's Patrick Kane or somebody else. Who knows? They'll bring somebody in. I don't think they'll go past the deadline with the group they have now. So I think you'll see someone else come in, preferably on the wing, to maybe play with Pasta and Krejci. Who knows? And then beyond that, I think as far as the ceiling is concerned, I could see this team winning a round, getting to the second round. Maybe, but right now I think with the Carolinas, the Rangers, Florida, and Tampa Bays of the world, I'm really having difficulty, going past that second round. Yeah, they could push it to 7 games, but a conference final, Boston Bruin team, I just don't see it.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Yeah, I think in order to get there, they'd have to probably spend some resources to acquire players. Okay, let's move on to the Ottawa Senators, who, they definitely made some moves in the offseason. I think everyone was super pumped coming into the season. Things are looking good. And so far, not so great. 0-2 to start the season, although, again, 2 games. 2 games in the middle of the season, no one cares. 2 games at the start of the season, and it feels like hell is boiling over. What is your take on the additions that the Senators made of Claude Giroux, Alex DeBrincat? Like, how much better are they actually going to make them over an 82-game season?
Well, that's the question mark, right? 82 games. Because, listen, I mean, new players always take time to gel with their teams. I think some guys can come in and, they can fire on all cylinders right off the bat. Other guys are going to take, 10, 15, 20 games to really feel, the other guy out, get that chemistry going. So, Senators fans don't freak out just because, the first few games haven't gone so hot. But I think a guy like DeBrincat, you bring in a consistent goal scorer like that, you bring in somebody with the IQ, the hockey sense, and just the playmaking ability of a Claude Giroux. I think over 82 games, you're going to see an obvious improvement. But not only that, but I think it's so great for some of these younger guys to have a Claude Giroux in this locker room, a guy with proven leadership, proven skill, proven, grit. He can go, he's been there battling the Sidney Crosbys in the playoffs before. So he knows the grind. He knows what it takes to go deep in the playoffs. He's been to the finals before. And so, I think this is just a great signing for this team. And he's a player that wanted to be there, right?
He's from there, and I think whether they win with him or not, or eventually, he's signed there for 3 years. I would expect that they make the playoffs in those 3 years, at least once.
Sure.
I don't expect the Senators to be Stanley Cup champions in the next 3 years, but I do expect that if they ever are, or they're ever that contender team, that you are going to look back on this time with Claude Giroux, and people are going to be talking about what they learned from Giroux that is now having an impact on their team. Much like Patrick Marleau was talked about for the Leafs for so long.
Right.
I think Giroux has an opportunity to be that. And, I mean, he's, at this point, a better player than Marleau was when Marleau was with the Leafs. Yeah,
I will say if there's anybody who should be concerned on this team, right now for me, the hot seat's got to be on head coach DJ Smith. I think This team's in a prime spot right now with, a guy like Alex DeBrincat under a cost-controlled contract, because I think he's going to be getting a raise. And, you just handed out a bunch of massive extensions.
Small raise for Alex DeBrincat.
Small raise.
For multiple 40-goal scorer Alex DeBrincat.
Right. You gave Batherson, you gave Tim Stützle, you gave, Brady Tkachuk, Norris. You gave all these guys massive extensions, so you're going to run out of money soon. So, I can't say for sure whether or not I think they're going to figure out a way to fit Alex DeBrincat into the equation past the season.
$22 million in cap space for next year. So
yeah, but you got to also figure out that defense. You got to figure out your goaltending situation next year too, because Forsberg is the only goaltender signed. So, maybe they want to save some of that money for depth players. But regardless, I do think, they would be stupid to let him walk. So,
he'll be matched at least 1 year.
Right. So I think for a guy who's been on the hot seat for a while, DJ Smith, I think this team is not going to be hesitant to pull the trigger to let him go and maybe try to go convince Barry Trotz to come in or somebody else to come in and take over this team quickly and try to turn things around, because I do think the expectations have gone up a little bit as far as this group is concerned. When you do bring in, make a move and trade for a guy like DeBrincat, you bring in Claude Giroux, the expectations naturally have to go up. And I think, with a coach who's been on the hot seat for a while, I think it wouldn't shock me with this ownership group if they decided to make a change quickly.
I think they like DJ Smith a lot. I don't think that he's in my mind, I don't think he's on the hot seat. I don't think he gets fired. Barring a 10-game losing streak to start the season, I think that he's pretty safe. I think that they're going to give him the year, and if they don't make the playoffs, then next year I'd say, that's going to be his deciding factor. But crazier things have happened. Some teams are trigger happy. By the way, Alex DeBrincat, because of the way his contract is constructed, his qualifying offer is $9 million for next year. So if Ottawa doesn't give him what he wants, he can sign that 1 year, $9 million deal and become a UFA. So he's going to make at least $9 million next year. We know that.
Yep.
Okay. Let's talk about this defense. What
defense?
Yeah, that's really where I look at this defense and I go, this is probably the worst defensive group in the National Hockey League. I'm trying to think of a worse defense other than Montreal, who just doesn't have some of their players playing right now, with Matheson hurt, and other than that, I don't know that there's a worse defense in the NHL, which is why you have so many people clamoring that they're going to get Jacob Chychrun out of Arizona, because it's so obvious that they need a Chychrun.
Yeah, that losing Chychrun would obviously make Arizona the worst defense, but I would still take their defense as a whole over this one. So, it really. So when I look at this defense, right, we know what Thomas Chabot is. He's a quality defenseman. Not great, but he's a quality defenseman. Maybe not worth $8 million right now, but I don't think that's any fault of his. I think once he has some help, and he has a good defensive partner, he could pan out to be a pretty good defenseman.
Artem Zub's been pretty good along his side. I don't hate that pairing. And Jake Sanderson looks fantastic, but he's a rookie. Remember, it's his rookie season. There's so few rookie defensemen that come in onto, especially now. When Cale Makar, you go, well, Cale Makar, he was a rookie defenseman. Well, he played on the frickin' Colorado Avalanche, who honestly could have won the cup 2 years ago. and they just happened to lose in that second round. But the Cale Makar comparison to anything is not fair, because he was on such a good team. Cale Makar could be dropped onto Ottawa. Would Ottawa be much better? Of course. Would he do well? Yes. But in his rookie season, would he have been as effective with the rest of the guys around him? Probably not. And he was, there still was that he's not playing great defensively. He's just doing a lot offensively, and that boosts his numbers. But he's become a much better defensive player as well. But you're never going to get this ultimate defenseman as a 20-year-old. Is what Jake Sanderson is? It's just not going to happen.
Teams get lucky, right? You can find those Quinn Hughes, those Mo Snyders, in the draft, but, they're not everywhere, and you're not going to find them all the time, right? So if you get a guy who can come in there, give you 19, 20 minutes and put up 30 points as a rookie defenseman, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, at 20 years old especially, right, they still got 2-3 years left to really develop into a true, potential guy where you can look at him at that point and say, okay, he's 25. He is what he is, right? You kind of figure out at that point, like, where he's going and what he is going to be. Because most defensemen really, they don't really like fully evolve until they're between 25 and 27 years old. Yeah. So you've got time.
Yep. Lots and lots of time. Okay. You got me thinking about Mo Sider. I was like, oh, well, yeah, there's like he broke my argument that you're not going to be good defensively as a 20-year-old. Well, guess what? He was last year, and that's why he won Rookie of the Year, and will likely be in the Norris conversation here shortly.
But again, not every team can find those.
They don't grow on trees. Yeah, right. I definitely don't grow on trees. Only Eiserman's trees. But yes, this defense is what is ultimately going to and currently holding this team back. I don't even know if Jacob Chikrin is the answer. I mean, you've already got Shabbat, Sanderson, and Nick Holden all on the left side, and that's where Chikrin plays. So where's Chikrin going to play with? Who's he going to play with? I don't think that he's the answer either. I think there's got to be something else that you take a look at, because based on the resources you're going to have to give up, it's going to bleed you somewhere else. So I don't like that. So that's if I'm Ottawa, I'm going, you know what? We're sticking with this defense. We've got everyone's a UFA at the end of this year. Zaitsev has only 1 year left. We'll bury him in the minors, or we'll eat half his salary and deal him, whatever it may be. I think that you get to build around Shabbat and Sanderson. There's no reason to trade important assets in the 2023 draft for a defenseman who may leave. That's the other thing, is that these guys who get dealt there's no guarantee that they want to stay.
Yeah, I mean, luckily for them, a Chikrin has some term left on him,
5 years left. Yeah.
But still, I mean, like, even if they go out and they try to make a play for, maybe say a Matt Dumba in Minnesota or a John Klingberg in Anaheim, right? These guys, like you said, they're UFAs after this year, so they could split, right? And for a team that is kind of on that brink of taking that next step towards playoff success and, going deep, you don't want to risk long-term assets because, again, if for some reason, I don't know, if for some reason, like, it doesn't pan out, right?
You don't want another scenario where the other team gets to pick in the top 5, gets Bowen Byram because you wanted Matt Duchene.
Exactly. Well, that's a perfect example. Absolutely.
And that was Pierre Dorion.
Yep.
That was
perfect
him.
Example.
That was him. We'll give him credit for the Carlson deal, though. Even when Carlson was dealt, people were like, "Oh my gosh, that's still not enough for Carlson." And now Ottawa only has 2 top 6 centers and a bunch to show for that deal, so not so bad. Okay, should we do our ceiling and floor for these teams?
Go.
For this team,
go.
Give me your ceiling and floor for the Senators.
All right. As far as the ceiling is concerned, I'd say a wild card spot. Right, I think this team's got enough firepower up front, and with a healthy Cam Talbot in net and Anton Forsberg, I think they're good enough to sneak into a wild card spot. Right now, that obviously means that maybe a team like Boston or maybe Tampa, have some misfortunes. They're going to need a lot of luck to make that happen, especially with this defense. But I think they could potentially sneak in. Right, they could be that number 5 spot, and maybe 3 teams out of the Metro only get in. Now, again, as far as a floor is concerned, to me, I think this is, a team that's, probably more than likely going to miss the playoffs. But with, Buffalo, Detroit getting a little bit better and maybe Montreal being a little bit more competitive this year, I do think they're still at the bottom of this division when it's all said and done. I could still see Ottawa finishing 7th in this division.
Okay. I agree with the floor. They're not quite as bad as Montreal, but they're definitely not. They're not there defensively, and you have to expect over the course of an 82 game season that that there's injuries too. If you have any injuries to that defensive core, then you are in big trouble. So I can't say that they're as bad as Montreal, but they definitely could finish towards the bottom of this division. As far as the playoffs go, I think the only way they're making the playoffs is if 5 make it from the Atlantic.
Yep.
I don't think that Boston, Florida, Toronto, and Tampa are going to all fall off that hard to where they end up in a position where they're missing the playoffs and they're watching Ottawa in there. I just don't see it yet. I also the hard part is I really don't see only 3 teams from the Metro making the playoffs.
I don't know. I look at
it'd be an unusual scenario to me. Islanders
right now it almost
good.
seems
Washington,
like Philly might make the playoffs. My God.
Right, and if Philadelphia is in that position, then you have to think that Pittsburgh, Philly, Carolina Rangers, or the Islanders, or the Capitals. Like there's 6 teams in that division that are still very highly likely to make the play, like to be in a playoff position. And if you've got that many teams that are doing well, you're going to get 4 teams in. I don't see the 5 teams from the Atlantic, but I think Ottawa could finish 5. I think most likely they're in a little battle. It'll be them, Detroit, and Buffalo all battling for maybe the possibility of that final wild card spot. And I hope that we have a race this year. That's what I want so badly, is a race.
Not a 30-point spread between 4 and 5 again.
Yeah, I don't want to know who's going to make the playoffs at my New Year's Eve party. I want to know on my birthday, which is April 10th.
Beautiful.
Okay, let's go to the Florida Panthers for our last team of the day. The Florida Panthers obviously make the biggest trade maybe in the last, 20 years. I don't know what we'd look back to as the next biggest trade, but never has 200-point players been dealt for each other. And Matthew Tkachuk ends up on the Florida Panthers, and this team is going to be good. We just wonder how good are they going to be in comparison to last year for the regular season. Just regular season, not playoffs at this point, but the regular season. Where do you see them in comparison to last year?
Yeah, that's the thing. They make this deal to be better built for the playoffs and not necessarily the regular season, right? My biggest question mark is on this back end with a guy like Mackenzie Weegar leaving now. Because to me, I think he was one of the more underrated number 2 defensemen in the NHL. And clearly, Calgary knew what they were getting. They get him locked up to a long-term deal now. And, I think Florida's going to be kicking themselves on letting him go. Although, maybe they couldn't have figured out any other way to get it done without including him in the deal. But, man, I think,
their defense took a big hit.
Yeah, when you look at what's, you've got, don't get me wrong, I like Mark Stahl as a number 6, number 7 defenseman, but now he's playing second-line minutes because you don't have that Mackenzie Weegar in there. And, when push comes to shove and you got to play Tampa, when you have to play, the Boston Bruins and these high-scoring, offensive teams, is Mark Stahl the answer on your second line? No. Yeah. Is Ratko Gudas the answer? No. So basically, yes, Ekblad, Forsling, I'll throw them out all day. I'm comfortable with that group there. But once you get beyond that, I have question marks. And I think Brandon Montour is a fine defenseman. He's good enough. But, I don't know. It just
you have
so
to
many
think that they will be looking to add a defenseman. But we've played this game before. There are not a whole lot of UFA defensemen coming up, right, that you're really excited about. Like, yeah, there's always players that you can scoop up, but are they going to have a positive impact? The Florida Panthers have no first round picks for the next 3 years, so there's that. Of course, there are UFAs that will be there in John Klingberg. I think there's going to be a lot of competition for him. he would be a great fit for the Panthers, but I think there's going to be so much competition that a first-round pick is going to be the first thing. Like, you aren't getting him for less than a first-round pick, in my mind.
Right. There's other guys out there like Shane Gostisbehere, maybe Oscar Klefbom. I don't know.
But is Gostisbehere getting dealt for less than a first-round pick?
Likely not. Honestly, if he has another year like he did last year.
He's playing 25 minutes a night, 24 minutes a night for the Coyotes right now. He's killing it for them. And putting up points on a garbage team, I know, but he has a role. 8 shots in the first 2 games of the year for him. Pretty good.
Yeah, he looks good, right? And so maybe you have to go look, at a team like, Ottawa with Nick Holden at 36 years old, right? There's a left-handed guy. Maybe Detroit with Ole Mata at some point, but these guys aren't needle pushers, right? They're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Those kind of defensemen that are really going to make that big of a difference.
Right. Yeah, no one where you go, oh, that guy will help us in the playoffs big time. Other than, of course, guys at the top. Matt Dumba's a UFA. Is there a small chance that, of course, if Minnesota is where they are right now, which is in 7th, granted after 2 games, but holy balls, they let in 14 goals in the first 2 games of the season, and Matt Zuccarello said that he feels like the defense is a junior hockey team. He said, I think we're playing defense like a junior hockey team.
Dude, I listened to an interview with Marc-Andre Fleury, and he used the word stupid like 18 times. It was great.
Yeah, even Arizona has managed to keep fewer goals out of their net in those 2 games. Granted, Minnesota has scored 9 goals in 2 games. It's just they've let in 14. So they're not all as lost. It's not as if they're letting in or can't score and letting in a bunch. I'm sure they'll right this ship quickly, but if Minnesota isn't in a playoff spot, or things aren't looking like they're going to make it, you got to think that Matt Dumba is going to get dealt, and maybe he'd be the answer. But again, a first-round pick is going to be front and center for a Matt Dumba, and the Florida Panthers don't have it. So, maybe you give up your first-round pick in 2026. That's their next. They have none in 23, 24, or 25. So 26. I don't know how far ahead you can go dealing your picks. How far ahead can you go?
I don't know. I don't see why there's any limitation.
I'll give you my 2040 first round pick.
You watch NBA
I'll tell you
teams,
what.
They're dealing 10 years, picks 10 years from now.
Tell you what, I'll be dead. So you can have my 2060 pick, first round pick.
I'll be fired by then.
Unprotected.
Yeah.
I'll make it unprotected, okay? Oh dear. Okay, well, as far as where you think this Florida Panthers team can land, I guess what I'm trying to say is the regular season, I don't think we think they're going to finish with 122 points, right?
No, I
not winning the President's Trophy this year.
No, yeah, I don't see them as a President's Trophy team. We'll probably talk about Toronto up there, and we'll get to them on our next show. But I think again, they're just more concerned at this point, similar to Tampa, is just getting in, right? I think they want to obviously develop some chemistry, see what where Matthew Tkachuk best fits, who he's best playing aside, and get their line combos back, get Anthony Duclair back healthy, get everybody firing on all cylinders by the time trade deadline rolls around, and then they can just start wheeling and dealing, But to me, I think this team is just more concerned about, finding balance, finding chemistry, and finding, who fits best where, and, what pieces maybe they need to add before the deadline. Okay.
Yeah, I got to think that they're actively they've got their eyes open for a defenseman. You have to think that. Beyond their top pairing, it's just tough pickings out there. As far as a player who may have a good year that we're not maybe familiar with, or hasn't had a good year before, I can see Luosterainen, right? Luosterainen. He already has 2 points in 2 games this year. I think he's going to exceed that 26 points that he put up last season in 78 games. He only had 2 points all playoffs last year. and he's getting some looks up in the top 6, and I think that if he can put together something that could be this year's Mason Marchment kind of thing for them. He's playing with Anton Lundell, who had a really nice season last year too, and with Colin White. So with this Florida team, you're just gonna. I mean, you've got an opportunity to score. There's just such good skaters on this team. They're so fast, and you're going to get your opportunities. He maybe is he could be Mason Marchment of last year.
Yeah, one guy I'm looking at, you mentioned his name, Anton Lundell. Had a pretty nice little season, 44 points in 65 games.
For a rookie season, too, yeah.
Yeah. Could have been a little bit better had he stayed healthy the whole year, but I think, 1 assist through 2 games right now. I think he's poised to potentially come in and steal some minutes from a guy like Sam Bennett, potentially move up into that second line, maybe see, Matthew Tkachuk along his wing at some point this year. Because, I think he plays a really good, smart two-way game, and he's young, he's fast, he knows how to dish the puck. And so I think, he has the potential to move up and down this lineup very easily. And so, maybe if Sam Bennett has, another, I don't want to say mediocre season like he did last year, but to me, I think, 49 points was fine. For what this team was doing, I think it kind of underwhelmed a little bit. And in the playoffs, only 3 points. So I think if he starts to slip it, a little bit, it's more than possible you could see Lundell come in there and sneak up to that second line center spot.
Sure. Yeah. They've got everything. I mean, and Anton Lundell is centering that second power play as well. Sam Bennett is on the wing for that. So you're going to get opportunities. Lundell he's being used everywhere. I mean, he's on that first penalty kill unit. He's on the second power play unit. I mean, he's going to get his time on ice, and the way that he skates, he may be more important than any other player outside of Tkachuk and Barkov because of what he can bring to the table and at 21 years old, centering that third line. He was playing some really good defensive hockey last year. It's not too often that a 20-year-old comes in and beats out Sasha Barkov for that top penalty killing unit centerman. He's very good defensively and sort of in that ilk of a Sasha Barkov. Just not the same high end skill, not quite as big, but
maybe not yet, right?
Not yet. Yeah.
Yeah. You could see it. But here's the other thing, though, too, we don't really even mention. If Florida wants to go far in this division, right, the way they had the division playoffs set up, Toronto, Tampa, Boston, they have really good third-line centers, right? Toronto's got David Kampf. I love him at that third-line center spot. Tampa Bay's got Anthony Cirelli, Braden Point, Steven Stamkos. Boston, you're looking at Krejci Bergeron and Charlie Coyle. So these teams all they're really deep at the center position. And so I think if Florida wants success, a guy like Anton Lundell is going to be so key for this team.
I love it. Okay, well, let's go ceiling and floor for this team.
All right. Yeah. Well, as far as the ceiling is concerned, let's just start there. I think they could potentially make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Okay. Do I think they're a final winner? I'm going to say no right now. That back end with that defense right now just worries me a little bit too much. I know they would like to bring in another piece there, and so maybe they do. And if say they bring in a guy like John Klingberg or Jacob Chikrin, who knows? If they find a way to work that out, then my story might change a little bit. I could put them, in that conversation. But for now, I'll just go Stanley Cup Finals. So, okay. And then as far as the floor is concerned, it's a first round loss for me. Depending on who they match up against, if they play the wrong team, get the wrong matchup, and say Spencer Knight or Bobrovsky aren't playing to their best, and again with this defense being what it is. Outside that top pairing, I have my question marks. So, they could potentially falter, and maybe, Tkachuk just never gets chemistry with anybody this year, and then, the wheels all fall off. So.
This division is just so tough because you've got, as far as these teams that, like the Leafs, they haven't been able to get out of the first round. Florida's only done it once since 1996.
Right.
There's these teams where you're like, gosh, whoever plays them or whoever they play, there's just a lot of tension, whereas other divisions, it's like, yeah, I mean, Vegas has won recently, Calgary's won rounds, Edmonton's won rounds now, Los Angeles is new. Like, there's not a lot of this like, wow, they have to win or they are screwed. Like, if Dallas doesn't win in the first round, fine. You look at the Central, what team losing in the first round is like the end of the world. I mean, it would like for Colorado, they'd be pissed if they lost in the first round, but they just won the Stanley Cup, and it is what it is. Maybe Minnesota would be in that ilk, but they also have this excuse of, well, we have no money. In the Metro, there's really no team where you're like, oh, everything is just going to go to hell if they lose in the first round again.
I might throw Carolina in that conversation, but still.
But Carolina's been to the conference finals a couple years. Like, it's not as if they haven't been there. It doesn't mean that a coach won't get fired. But as far as that, especially Toronto, but Florida to a certain extent too. I mean, Florida did just fire their entire coaching staff because they lost in the second round.
Well, right. That's the one thing we didn't even mention, right? They have a whole new head coach, whole new system in here. So, it's not like they're going to go clean house again after this year. But,
big expectations for Paul Maurice for sure.
Yeah.
And he has. It's been a minute, like, since he was in the playoffs and relevant with Winnipeg. You wonder how much was his system, and is he really that much better than Andrew Brunette was last year? I don't know. That'll be. There's a lot of people who would say no, he's not. He's not a better coach, and so we'll see what he can do differently with this group that he just couldn't seem to capture with the Winnipeg Jets, and maybe, I don't know if his coaching style will adjust or change a little bit so that the problems that have occurred in Winnipeg don't happen here in Florida.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Okay. Did I give my ceiling floor? I don't think I did.
You did not.
No. I think my ceiling is a conference final bid for the Florida Panthers. I think they could potentially go there. I think it's tough to see this team getting past the second round. I can see them winning the division again. Not with 122 points, but I can see them winning the division again and beating that wild card team and then running into Tampa or Toronto or Boston and losing. But I don't see them going further than the conference finals. I don't see them beating out some of those teams in the Metro either. It's almost maybe I don't see them going past the second round. I think that's where I'm at. I just don't think their defense is good enough. And as far as their floor, I think that they're like a wild card, maybe a wild card team. Things don't go as well as expected, and you get the Bobrovsky from 2 years ago because he seems to have good year, bad year. He's Craig Anderson, good year, bad year, good year, bad year. And I know you've got Spencer Knight behind him, but this defense is. If there's any injury, it's like Ottawa. If there's any injuries here, it's going to be a big problem because you don't have the depth, and I think that's going to hold them back. I think in the long term, they are probably in a better position with Matthew Tkachuk, but this season, losing Huberdeau and Weegar just sets them back at least a year, I think, in my mind.
Okay.
All right. Well, there's the second part of the Atlantic Division preview. We are going to get to the Detroit Red Wings and the Toronto Maple Leafs in our next preview, and then we're done with the National Hockey League. We're donezo, completo, and we can get on and talk about whatever's happening in the moment. By the time we're done, we're going to be like, all right, it's the quarter mark. No, we'll get it done before then. Justin, any final thoughts before we sign off today?
Oh man. Let's just keep up the high scoring hockey. I mean, I love watching these games, and
that's the beginning of the season. Always,
I know.
There's usually,
but that's the one thing they talked about, right? The league was so high scoring last year at a rate it hasn't been in so long. Is it going to continue? And so I want that to continue. So let's keep it up.
Yeah. I think that it will. I don't think that goalies or shooters are finally they're taking the edge over the goalies, and I think
agreed.
It's been fun to watch. Fantasy hockey, I'm excited to finally be going. We're not going head to head this week, but I'll be keeping an eye on you. I see that your team, I think, had the highest estimated point total for the week. So, I'll give props to the machine. They think you're going to beat everyone this week, but just don't forget to set your lineup, because I did in another league, and Sidney Crosby had a 2-goal, 1 assist or something like that, or a 3-point night, tons of shots on goal, and I freaking forgot to set my roster.
Well, I will say this. Luckily, our league is not where it's like, the point total where you just, what's the rotisserie, where you just play everybody every week, and you get points based off that. It's head to head still, which is good. So, I think I'm looking at it right now. My projected point total is 532, and the person I'm playing is 411. So we'll see how that goes.
Theoretically, you should win.
Theoretically, yes. Although I will say this, my fantasy football league, I'm 1-4 right now, and I've been projected to win every single week, and I've only got one win to show for it.
That's
Dude, the worst thing ever.
Do I have too many? Ask yourself this question: do I have too many goalies in our league? Because I have Darcy Kemper, Georgiev, Grubauer, Markstrom, and Matt Murray.
I've got 4. Yeah.
But Matt Murray's on my IR, so that's why.
Okay,
I was like, well, I'll just put him on the IR.
I've got Demko, Hellebuck, Vasilevsky, and Aiden Hill.
Yeah, yours are ridiculous. You spent all your early picks on goalies, so good for you.
Sure did, buddy.
Good for you. All right, well, that's our show. Find us on at OT Hockey Talk. Let us know how your fantasy team is doing and what you think of our Atlantic Division preview. We will talk to you very soon. Have a great night.